All rise, football fans, as the Welt Rheaume Miami Dolphins report with David Furones is in session.
Welt Rheaume has more than 62 years of litigation experience handling insurance disputes. They are committed to resolving even the toughest insurance claims quickly. Call them for a free consultation. 954-966-4646. Here's Miami Dolphins insider David Furones.
Right. How you doing, kid?
I'm feeling good. Trying to get rested up again after a long, strenuous weekend. But yeah, I mean, excited that we're covering this new era and a lot of just new faces. Had some interviews with them the last 2 days too.
You know, a lot of us obviously are pissed because we wanted Ruben Bain. But
Yeah.
you know, as time goes on, people are going to see whether Kaden Proctor is the guy. We just had Tony Pauline on, and he would have taken Kaden Proctor. He would have taken Downs. But I took that out of the equation. I said, okay, you can't take Downs. You don't want Bain, right? So who would you have taken? What's the tackle you would have taken? He said Kaden. He said, once the first two, Fano and Mawinoa, were gone, I would have taken Kaden. So overall, your thoughts, where do you stand on the decision of Kaden Proctor?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess those were the moves when it was Fano and Mawinoa going 9 and 10 for the Dolphins that really I maybe destroyed their – now, that's not to say they definitely had them –
Triggered.
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of us looked at it as, okay, it's kind of falling the Dolphins' way. They have Bain there. They have Caleb Downs there for them for the taking. And I guess clearly that they were viewing it differently in Miami Gardens at Dolphins headquarters. So they wanted to build from the inside out. It was to go get one of these premier linemen so that they can establish that offensive line first. I know you were a big fan of that concept, at least, maybe not the pick itself going in, but you do like the concept of going offensive lineman first, get those big hogs in there so that you build that first. And then you set that up for Malik Willis this year, for the quarterback of the future, if it's not him. So all in all, I mean, I'm here. I'm going to be like, all right, let's see what Kaden Proctor turns into. There's obviously a unique aspect to the combination of his size at more than 350 pounds and his strength. You got to make sure that those discipline concerns over his weight are taken care of. When Nick Saban says something about one of his players, then that's something that you have to listen to. If he says something negative about it, which a lot of coaches are going to speak positively and pitch their players, that's possibly telling, especially when you come to an area where there's a lot of distractions. I know that's different to do with weight issues when he's out of the building, but you got to get him into the building and you got to make sure that he stays on his program. But it's risky because now that decision will always be compared. Kaden Proctor will always be compared to the careers of Caleb Downs and Ruben Bain. So that's a risky proposition as far as grading that pick, because if one of those becomes some Hall of Fame caliber type of player, it's always going to be compared. And no one would have compared the other way. If they took who everyone was expecting, either Downs at 11 or Bain, once you trade back and got 2 extra picks at 12, no one would have compared to Kaden Proctor if Kaden Proctor turns into a Hall of Famer and is just like maybe a Trent Williams type of tackle. So that's just the risk you take by making this pick. But they were convicted in it, so I give them credit for that, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to measure him against Vega and obviously Bain. Yeah. I wouldn't have taken Downs. I would have taken one of those guys. If I'm going to be honest, I know Caleb Downs is a hell of a player, don't get me wrong, but I would have taken Bain first, and then I would have taken Vega, and then I would have taken, somebody else. I don't know, Downs probably or something, but I'm going to compare him to Vega and to Bain for me personally moving forward, because that's who I would have taken. But again, it's fair to compare him to Downs overall. Listen, man.
I think that part, on your point, if Proctor ends up at guard for this team, then yes, then now that also is part of the equation. Vega, Ioane. If he ends up being the long-term tackle, then it's a different story. Long-term right tackle.
I'm just look at it long-term. Who has the better career? Who was the better player? Bain, Vega, or Kaden, period. Yeah. Just who's the better player overall, and that's how I'm going to look at it. I understand what they have to do this year, that they'll play him at guard, at right guard, and then when they kick out Austin Jackson next year, he'll move over to right tackle, and then they'll go draft another guy that they think is versatile enough to play right tackle also, so they can play right guard and all that. So I get we're now learning what they're going to want to do in the future and all that kind of stuff. So that's cool. I totally get it. But I also do worry about Malik having a 6'8" guard there.
Well, that's the other thing. That's what gives me pause about the idea that he is going to start at guard. So I'm not even sure that would be the case. I know there's different ways it could play out. Either it could be that, yes, you just put Proctor, you insert Proctor in at right guard, and you still have Austin Jackson at right tackle where he's played the last 4 years. Or it could be it could be Austin Jackson moves into guard where he has been, and he's the one that with a new regime, this new regime isn't giving credence to old commitments, and he's on a pay cut. He's on a restructured deal. He's going to have to earn his way wherever he fits in, and Proctor is their guy who goes immediately to right tackle. And even if you do that, could it be Austin Jackson goes back to left guard where he did play in 2021 before he found that permanent home at right tackle, and let Jonas Avainaya go back to the right side where he was more comfortable in college, which there's a lot of possibilities. I actually lean toward that last one that I mentioned.
I would tell you that that's a disaster in the making, because the one kid's already been on the left for a year. So just leave him there overall and let him try to grow into that position. Austin has only excelled at right tackle, not at guard. He's never excelled at guard. He struggled at guard. So now you're going to have him for 1 year, and you're going to put him at right tackle, at right guard, or you put him at left guard. Now he has to habitually learn everything. Now you're going to move Savanaya back to right, even though that's his natural. But now all of a sudden he's got to do everything again. And then the kid that you drafted was a left tackle. Even though he's played other positions, he was a left tackle. Now you're going to put him at right tackle. Because I get it, he's going to stay there forever. But now you're creating, uneasiness all over. Whereas Savanaya has been playing left, let him stay there. Jackson's been playing right, let him stay there for the last year, so you could get productive play for your young quarterback. If you have all these changes, that puts more pressure on them, and then also more chaos for the quarterback. Instead, you keep Kaden at right guard, so he habitually starts doing everything to the right, opposite of what he was doing last year. And then he's ready to move to right tackle when Austin has moved out. And then you give Savanaya the chance to continue to work between the same center and the same left tackle for another year to see if he continues, to improve, because he did slightly improve as the year went on. But if you start doing all of that with a new system and a new quarterback and all of that, I think you're just adding more chaos to a chaotic situation already. And when it comes to the offensive line, that's actually the last place you really want chaos. That's just me.
Of course. I get that argument too, but I mean, I could see a new regime coming in saying, hey, we don't like what they were doing with you, Jonah, at left guard. They should have never done that. We're going to start you brand new where we know the college tape showed you shine at, which is on the right side. And they could go either way on this. It's not like I'm not saying this based off of like information that this is how they're going to go. It's just they still have to make that decision, and they got to get everyone in the building and really see the guys put their hands on them, see what they're doing, what they do well, what aspects of their blocking game still need fine tuning, etc., and then figure out where they can line up best to create the best five that can work in unison. So. They still have to figure that out, and there's different ways it could go. But I just see it as a possibility to send Jonah back to the right side. Austin, you're the one that's got to, on a pay cut, you got to go learn it somewhere else. Kaden Proctor, you're the one that this group has invested in, and we're going to put you in the best position to succeed, while the other guys got to kind of like figure it out with something that might be more new to them. And, hey, even right tackle will be new to Proctor, but it's still at least the same position and where you probably project that he'll play long term. So there's different ways it could go.
Yeah, no, there's definitely different ways that can go. I just think in a year like this, you want to have the least chaos that there is,
Sure.
especially on the offensive line, and that's very chaotic. What you're they could do it because you're 1,000% right. New regime,
Start brand new.
way. I mean, look at what you saw yesterday with Pat Riley and the Heat. They can't even see the wreckage. I mean, talk about it living in denial.
Same message.
Yeah, it's, I mean, like, wow, that's terrible. Like, you guys think you actually are. He actually said yesterday that we didn't want to tear it up because we think we could compete with anybody in the East except the two teams in the West. Really? It's like, wow, so you never know what people are thinking. And look at the Heat. Look how delusional they are right now. So it could be, you could be right. These guys could come in and say, yeah, we're going to move everything around because we think that's what's better. Even though I may think it's chaotic, they may look at it like, whatever.
Hey, and 2026 is the year to get chaotic if you want to. You're building this to be right, to show some signs in 2027 and really get right and try to compete in 2028, So
yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. I'll tell you why no. Yes, if you can, because it's the first year and you're trying to set everything up and your vision is, okay, we're going to keep Savania, but he's going to be a right guy. And, whatever. And Kaden, and you're going to be the right tackle. So let's just put you in there right now and let's just get it going. Okay, you're right. You're right. It could be. Now, by you creating more chaos, you now make it harder for your quarterback. So let's just say we have a screwed up year and you don't get to assess the quarterback the way you would like because it's too chaotic around him. But then you're not convinced that he's the guy and you're sitting there at number one. What do you do, young man? So if you want to really get an assessment of Malik Willis to make sure that you're not supposed to take the Manning, okay, then you want to make it as palatable as possible for Malik Willis so you can assess who he is. Unless you have already assessed who he is, you don't care how chaotic it is, and you're not going to draft Manning. You're going to draft something else because you're convinced that this guy's the guy. So that's why I would say, because at the end of this season, I'm not exactly sure that they should continue with Malik Willis. And I think that, if, again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, like you keep saying, maybe they see it one way and I see it another, but I see it as you need to create a situation where I can assess this guy, because if you can't, I'd rather you go take Arch Manning.
Yeah, you totally need an assessment on Malik Willis to know that. And then, man, I'd be a big fan of drafting Jeremiah Smith too. I'm not sure about a lot of the quarterbacks. I know there's just an abundance of them, and the next college football season will tell. Someone will rise to the top and then show that they are the clear number one, and someone else will show they're the clear number two. There's just so many names right now, and maybe it's Arch Manning. One thing I do know is Jeremiah Smith will be a home run prospect in the NFL that on pure talent should be the top pick, but then, probably a quarterback will end up being number one, maybe even number two. So
remember, a Manning hasn't failed yet at quarterback in the NFL. So
yeah, that's fair.
Just saying, I might take a chance on Arch, because people already gave up on him at the beginning of last year, and then they shut the hell up by the end of the year because
right.
You got to have some patience, and maybe this year now he'll have an even better year because he'll be even more comfortable, overall. It's just funny how people are. But to me, again, you have a chance. You're going to naturally tank because you're going to suck this year badly. I mean, this is going to be a bad year overall. You're going to be a very young team, a very green team. You could have a chance to land a franchise quarterback. You better be convinced that Malik Willis is the guy if you pass up on Arch Manning. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. You need to get your certain assessment on him. And to add with Arch Manning is the Texas combination where Steve Sarkisian running a lot of the same concepts that it was Mike McDaniel before, even the same plays. And the offense should at least have some of those same concepts under Bobby Slowick. So if that's the direction you're going, and I know Jeff Hafley wants to be more physical and wants to incorporate the run more than Mike did, but still it's running some of those old West Coast concepts and also the outside zone in the run game, all these things. Then coming off the Shanahan tree, then. Texas is the school you want. That's why they drafted Quinn Ewers. And now that even though two of them were defenders, they drafted another 3 from Texas. So clearly there's a big Texas to Dolphins a pipeline going on. So, that would be that's just another reason why it would fall in place for Arch Manning with the Dolphins if they were selecting high and he's up there in the next draft.
All right. And remember, you can follow him on Twitter at David Furones _. Give me your favorite pick of the draft and give me a pick that you question. Is there one that you don't like or question?
Okay, so favorite pick. I got to go with the late first rounder, the second one that they came up with,
Really?
Chris Johnson. Yeah. I like Chris Johnson. I mocked him in one. So when our last mock draft before the Bengals Giants trade, we published one version, and then. Since we alternated picks, Perk had it at 11. He had odd numbers. I had even numbers. So he chose Maui Noah. He had Maui Noah. We had Maui Noah there, and Perk chose Maui Noah. For all we know, that could have been actually the pick if the board had played out that way and the Giants didn't take him. Actually, then once the Giants – and so with that, and by the time it came around to me at 30, then I chose Chris Johnson. We had him available. We go offensive lineman, then cornerback. Just exactly how the Dolphins did it. Now, once the Giants traded into that number 10 pick with Cincinnati, we had to flip the pick right before the Dolphins, and we said the Giants are going to be taking Maui Noah, which they did. So then because Perk and we had Mansour Delane still available. So because that change happened, then Perk picked Delane, and then I wasn't going to go cornerback by the time it came back to me at the end of the first round, so I had to make a different pick. But that was my original inclination, was to go Chris Johnson with that number 2 pick late in the first round. It seems like they had intel that in between their pick and where they were in the draft at 27, someone who was going to take him, so they had to go up and get him. They got the number 2 corner on their board, who they had ahead of Jermod McCoy, who fell tremendously with the knee issue. You got him far after Delane went off the board. And the way Jeff Hafley evaluates corners is he grades them on how they defend in the 3 levels of coverage. Can they win at the line of scrimmage? Can they turn their hips and mirror a receiver in all the short and intermediate routes? And then can they win down the field? And he graded Johnson as capable of winning in all 3 areas, plus has the versatility of being on the boundary, being in the slot and the nickel. So this defense, Hafley wants a lot of guys who are versatile, who they could line up in different spots, whether it's in the front 7, whether it's in the secondary. So Johnson fits perfectly into all that mold. And then let's see, a pick that I really didn't like. I really just questioned why Caleb Douglas was the pick so high as that first 3rd rounder. I think we knew by then the Dolphins needed a receiver, and then he kind of wasn't like one of the names that we looked at. There was Brazel. Now it did affect the Dolphins that Malachi Fields was picked right before them, so I think that threw a wrench into their plan. He would have been the pick, it seems, but even Chris Bell, who was drafted later, was kind of one of the names. Like, wait, you're passing up on these guys, and you go with Caleb Douglas, who no one really had going in that spot. But I've come around to it. I understand, he had a great Senior Bowl. Even Chris Johnson said he was one of the toughest covers in that setting, in the one-on-one. So I get that they like him as a prospect. I just wondered why in that moment. And they kind of made up for it. One of the guys I preferred, Chris Bell, even though he's coming off the ACL, he was still there 19 picks later at 94. So they still ended up getting him. But yeah, I was just confused when it was Caleb Douglas, and I'm scrambling to find out who he is and why, because he wasn't on my radar really for a 3rd round pick. So yeah, but I
didn't like the Caleb Douglas pick either at that point. Tony Pauline likes it. He thinks the kid will be all right. He's not worried about the drops. He thinks the kid's a blocker and that he'll be physical. Although, from what I've seen, I think he's got to get more ball secured and physical in the air. He has the size and all that to do all that.
Yeah, length.
I didn't see that. I didn't see the same thing, but we'll see with that one. Chris Bell is the one that I love. It's the other Chris. I like the Chris Johnson pick too. I'm with you. But I think the Chris Bell pick was probably one of the steals, the steal of their draft and one of the steals of the draft.
Anyone who followed UM last season knows what Chris Bell is capable of in that stadium too. So
he's just a man, bro. He plays football the right way. He runs routes the right way. He's got size, everything, hands. I mean, any quarterback would want that. And that's the other thing that, they did very well. Instead of throwing fades to midgets, now you're going to be throwing fades to bigger players. And that is very important when you've got a Chris Bell. And hopefully the Caleb Douglas kid is a player, because he's definitely got the speed and the length.
Yeah.
They definitely saw all the measurables on that one. See, sometimes this was an interesting draft because the short GM and the short head coach will take the undersized, Chris Johnson, or the undersized Kyle Lewis, or the undersized Michael Taffy, or even Jacob Rodriguez is not considered a big linebacker either. He's not really a small linebacker, but he's not considered a big linebacker. So it's interesting that the short GM and the short head coach, they don't hold size against you sometimes. And in this draft, they showed it over and over. Now, Seydou Traore is not. He's a measurables guy. Chris Bell's a measurables guy. Caleb Douglas is a measurables guy. Kaden Proctor is a measurables guy. But then there's a couple of other guys that they're not measurable guys. They're more about high IQ, great football players, all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting how the mix of characteristics that they went after throughout the draft.
Yeah. I mean, I think they want smart, physical, tough guys. So not everyone's going to check all the boxes. So
right.
Kaden Proctor, clearly it's the measurables. They see that size and speed, and Sullivan called it rare. So that's why he was like, I am not passing up on bringing in a lineman that has this combination of physical traits. So Jacob Rodriguez is that leader, high IQ player, and very technical. The way he forces fumbles and knows how to get the ball out can change games with that peanut Tillman punch that he has on ball carriers. Will Kazmarek as a blocker, as a tight end, he's just a beast and a bulldozer who, I like that pick as far as just really a guy that can contribute in that aspect. As the inline blocking tight end, he'll have that role. And I just see him dominating with his blocks. And I found it interesting how they went sometimes where they were perceived to reach for the guys that they liked, whether it's, you could go down the list, Kaden Proctor would be one of them, Caleb Douglas would be one of them, but then maybe Kazmarek, because not a lot of people thought, okay, the blocking tight end would go now in the 3rd round, but
I love that pick.
Right.
I love that pick.
Grab the guys that they like. But then they found some value in some other picks, like Chris Bell, that he was still around because of the ACL injury. So you grabbed him when you could. And then Kyle Lewis, a lot of people thought he would be a day 2 pick. And even though he's undersized, so didn't check the box of the measurables. He's there in the 4th round, and you're like, all right, like we got to snag this guy because obviously he has so much potential. Maybe like Taft, they went higher than a lot of people would have in the 5th round for him. But Max Llewellyn, a lot of people thought was going to go earlier, and then you snag him in the 7th with the opportunity at the edge for this defense. Like he could end up being a steal, like a 7th round pick that really contributes and sets the edge in the run game, gets bigger as he gets into an NFL building and can play the 5 technique, be that 4-3 defensive end that if they're going to be based out of 4 down linemen is very valuable on this defense. So he could end up being a steal in the 7th round when they didn't expect he would be there at that spot.
Don't forget, folks, Welt Rheaume, proud sponsor of this program. Jeff Welt and Daniel Rheaume, they are the bookend tackles you want defending you. If you're dealing with bankruptcy, homeowner property damage, condo damage, criminal defense, business owner claims, commercial litigation, personal injury, reach out to them. The consultation's completely free. 954-966-4646. They have their own adjusters. So I know when you call the insurance company, you had an accident, damage to your home or whatever, then they send their adjusters and all that. But those adjusters work for the insurance company. You call Welt Rheaume, never call the insurance company. They send their adjusters, and then they attack the insurance company on your behalf. You never have to call the insurance company. You never have to deal with the insurance company. All you do is pick up a check at the offices of Welt Rheaume. Pretty easy. 954-966-4646. All right, so from the info that you've been able to gather on the undrafted college free agents, as the late, great Mad Dog would say, is there anybody there that makes your toes tingle?
Makes my toes tingle. Let's see. The D lineman out of Louisville, because the Dolphins, Rene Conga, Dolphins didn't draft a D lineman. Obviously, they have 3 young ones from the previous draft class and who the new regime also likes. So old regime, new regime in agreement on those guys. But he reportedly, according to Aaron Wilson in Houston, received a guaranteed deal of $287.5K. So that's significant for an undrafted guy to get that guaranteed money. That means this group really sees something in him. I'm going to look at the safety out of Indiana, Moore. It's Lewis Moore, if I'm not mistaken. Lewis Moore out of Indiana, All-American guy. Now, he's older. He's 25. So he was in college since before COVID even. But high IQ player, obviously part of the national champion, 6 interceptions last season. So has a chance to make this roster at a position where the Dolphins are a little bit deficient. So those are a couple of the guys I look at. One of the running backs for sure, because they didn't draft a running back. Obviously behind Achane, it's Jalen Wright, Ollie Gordon. And then will there be a 4th one that makes the roster? So Le'Veon Moss was a big name for Texas A&M throughout the season. And Anthony Hankerson, a local kid, went to St. Thomas Aquinas. He's from Palm Beach County. So Oregon State was highly productive for them. So, there's a few guys that really have a shot. And then you don't know if that edge rusher from Western Michigan, Rodney McGraw, just because there's obviously opportunity at that position. Who knows if one of these linemen show up? So definitely some opportunity, but it's hard for them to stand out when you had a 13-pick draft class, but still some potential here.
I'm with you there. All right. Don't forget to follow him on Twitter at David Furones _. When's the first mini camp, maxi camp?
Or the rookie mini camp would be Friday after next. This weekend they got F1 on the stadium grounds, and then it's rookie camp. All these guys get.
So the F1 race pushes it back a week because it's always the weekend right after the draft. So
is it always? Yeah.
Well, at least it could be for me. I'm trying to. I think from what I remember, it was always right after the next weekend after the draft. So the fact that the F1 race is going on, that pushes it over another week. That's interesting.
Yeah, in recent years, it's actually always been the second week. Now, maybe that's because the Dolphins host F1 Miami. I'm not sure what it is across the league, but
that's what it is, bro. That's what it is, because it always used to be right after.
Yeah, in recent years, it's been like this. So this is kind of like what I know from covering the team. So,
right,
yeah,
right, the F1 race, right, exactly. All right, good stuff. Should be fun, and we'll continue to cover it. Appreciate you as always, my brother. We will catch up on Friday, my friend. Thank you.
Sure. Sounds good.
This has been another session of the Welt Rheaume Miami Dolphins Report with David Furones. At Welt Rheaume, they don't get paid unless you win. They handle complex personal injury claims caused by the fault of another in both state and federal courts. They handle auto, trucking, motorcycle slip and fall, and bicycle accidents. Call 954-966-4646. Welt Rheaume can help.